Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Hinata's eyes scanned over the scrolls that had about every information about the trade system in the empire. Naruto had decided to let her take charge of it for about a few weeks now, so she's been doing her best to memorize which kingdom traded resources with each other and how they facilitated the flow. The main monetary source, such as gold and silver, as well as jewels and coins, were supplied to the rest of the kingdoms by the Uzumaki kingdom. Making sure that that source of income was regulating smoothly was the most important factor she needed to focus on, so she kept close supervision over the economic court officials to ensure they were up to date with all incoming and outgoing resources. As for her training, she finally managed to defeat Guy at least 3 times now. Naruto was especially proud of her for that, since Guy was literally his strongest soldier. She's been practicing with and without her Byakugan so that her skills without it would flourish as well. She didn't want to depend on her bloodline's power to become stronger. As for archery and swordsmanship, Naruto invited for one of his most skilled teacher of weaponry, Tenten, to come train Hinata. With the Byakugan, her precision was on point when she shot the arrow to hit the target. However, without it, she was a bit clumsy. A drop of sweat slid down Hinata's temple as she once again pulled back the string and brought the steel arrow close to her cheek. Her eyes narrowed as she focused on the red circle drawn on the wooden stake about 50 yards away from her. Naruto informed her that they would place the target further away each time she hit the same target twice in a row. They started at 30 yards, so she's only been able to hit 4 times in the past hour. In a split second, she let go of the arrow and watched as it flew in the air straight towards the wooden stake before pinning itself about 2 inches away from the target. Hinata let out a frustrated sigh as she reached for another arrow. "Keep calm, Your Majesty," Tenten stated as she came behind Hinata and gently positioned Hinata's arm straighter. "Remember to keep your hold steady and be confident. Be confident." That echoed in Hinata's mind as she once again set her attention on the target. Taking a few breaths to calm her body down, she firmly gripped the arrow and then shot it precisely forward. She nearly jumped in glee when the arrow hit the target on point with a loud thok. "Good job," Tenten praised her. "If you can hit it again on your next one, we'll move it to 60 yards. That's typically the range that we start categorizing our archers as good enough to recruit into the Uzumaki army." "How is she doing?" Hinata and Tenten turned to see Naruto walking towards them with a few servants behind him. Tenten made a polite bow before answering. "She's improving very quickly, Your Majesty. We'll be moving on to 60 yards soon enough." Naruto's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Wow, already?" He turned his attention to Hinata and smiled lovingly at her. "You never fail to amaze me, Hinata. Would you mind if I watch your next shot?" Hinata could feel her cheeks flushing. She would no doubt be nervous with him watching, but she reminded herself that she needed to stop being timid around him. Of course. She reached for an arrow from her back and faced the target yet again. She stood straight and firmly pulled the arrow back, making sure to keep her elbow straight and her body positioned parallel to the target. Her eyes narrowed at the target and she pulled back a little more to add some force. Hinata shot the arrow, listening intently to the swooshing sound of it as it flew and then curved down to pin precisely in the middle of the wooden stake for a second time in a row. She felt a heavy weight lifted off her shoulders when Naruto clapped loudly from behind her. "I expect nothing less from my bride," Naruto complimented. Hinata blushed when he suddenly took a step forward and placed a soft kiss on her head. She could evidently see how Tenten and the other servants averted their eyes down almost instantly. My goodness, this man was way too bold for his own good sometimes. Naruto wasn't oblivious to the fact that her face turned red and how the others hid their gaze, so he just chuckled at their reactions. "I think that's enough training for today. I forgot to tell you, tomorrow will be Prince Sasuke's crowning. We will be leaving tonight." Hinata blinked. That was such a short notice. "Tonight?" Naruto grinned at her adorable, surprised expression. "Yes. I apologize for not informing you earlier." Hinata silently followed after him, with a trail of their servants behind. Tenten stayed back to clean up the bows before she left the palace. Hinata placed her hand to her beating, nervous heart. This would be the first time she ventured out into another kingdom. She always wondered what it was like: the people, the food, the scenery, the way of the villagers, daily life. Each kingdom had their own uniqueness. She noticed that the Uzumaki kingdom was so much more livelier and carefree than her father's. She now knew that it was probably because of the different ways Naruto and Hiashi governed their people. Once they reached their bedroom, Naruto snapped his fingers and the servant stopped outside the door before he closed it. Hinata was surprised to see 3 dresses already laid out on the bed. I had a few of our palace seamstresses pick out the most extravagant garments for you. One for travel tonight, one for tomorrow during the event, and one for when we come back home. I remember you telling me you enjoy making and designing dresses, so I hope these are to your liking. It was heartwarming that he would remember such a small detail about her. She walked over and ran her hand down the first dress, surprised at how soft the fabric was. She was also amazed at how simple, yet elegant the dresses looked. The style was exactly what she would have picked out herself. Thank you, Your Majesty. These are perfect. She smiled thankfully at him. I'm glad you like them. Come now, we must leave before the sun sets. Hinata peered out the window of the carriage to observe the scenery. They were traveling on a narrow mountain road right next to an ocean. This was the first time she's ever seen such a huge body of water. She's only ever seen small streams and rivers in the Hyuga kingdom. It was unbelievable that such marvelous beauty like this existed. It also made her realize that she's been extremely closed off to the outside world. Her conservative nature and compliance with spending almost her whole life inside the Hyuga castle has kept her prisoner from seeing what the world had to offer. Have you never seen an ocean before? You're staring at it like it's the most amazing thing ever. Naruto laughed softly. Hinata nodded eagerly at him. It is incredible. Will it be often that we get to travel to other kingdoms and villages? I wouldn't mind seeing more of the whole empire. If that is what you wish, I will gladly take you to explore. Naruto's heart swelled at the look that she gave him. Her gaze seemed like she absolutely adored him right now. Is there something on my face? He grinned cheekily at her and could feel his cheeks flushing. Hinata was beginning to realize that he had a rather cute side to him. He always flashed that smile and did that chuckle when he got embarrassed. I was just thinking, how lucky I am to be your bride, that's all. Ever since being with you, you've opened my eyes to new experiences and such exquisite beauty in the empire. I can say for the first time in my life, that I am beginning to know what happiness and freedom truly feels like. Naruto reached for hand and brought it up to his lips, placing a light on her knuckles. Hinata, I will always, to my best effort, place your happiness as a priority. That was my promise to your father, and I intend to keep it. Also, he smirked teasingly at her and leaned in closer, causing her to instinctively freeze up and blush. If you say you are lucky to have me, is it safe to say that you are falling for me? Why, Your Majesty. Hinata quickly glanced down to avoid his eyes and her hand gripped her dress nervously. I was merely expressing my gratitude and in no way did I mean to get your hopes up. I apologize for not selecting my words wisely. Ah, of course. She still answered with such dignity and formality even when she was inevitably embarrassed to the core. He loved this woman so much. I was just joking, Hinata. He laughed at her usual timidness and backed away to ease her mind. But, in all honesty though, I can't wait to hear your answer. Though I know I can't force your feelings, I eagerly hope that you will have a room somewhere in your heart for me. I am literally dying to kiss you sometimes, you know. Hinata just could not handle how unfiltered he was with his affections for her, sometimes. To come from a family who never showed any love towards her to Naruto, who proudly declares that he desperately wants to kiss her is almost overwhelming. She wondered if she would be comfortable enough to let him go that far. It was surprising that in just a few months, they were already intimate to the point that it wasn't particularly awkward anymore to hold hands or to embrace each other. She was used to the familiar touch of his fingers intertwining hers, the usual feather-light kisses that he sometimes gave on her hand, cheeks and forehead, and she found herself yearning for the warmth and scent of his body. It was almost embarrassing to admit that to herself, but she knew she couldn't deny it either. He was no doubt physically attractive, that was a given ever since the first night he came to take her as his bride. However, now it was a different kind of attraction. There was just something so alluring about his charm and aura. Though she told herself she wouldn't fall in love with him, she had to be honest, he was making it incredibly hard to resist. She was abruptly torn from her thoughts when the carriage came to a sudden stop. Are we here already? Naruto raised an eyebrow and peered out the carriage window. A grin slowly graced his face. I guess time just passes by quicker when we're together, huh? The carriage door opened to reveal Kakashi, who did a slight bow to them. Your Majesties, we have arrived at the Uchiha Palace. Hinata marveled at the beauty of the place, thinking that it was almost comparable to Naruto's castle. Much to her surprise, the front doors of the palace opened to reveal King Fugaku and Queen Makoto, followed by Sasuke and Sakura and a number of court royals. You've arrived. What a splendid sight it is to see you, Emperor. Fugaku greeted as he and Naruto exchanged bows to each other. Likewise. I wouldn't miss Sasuke's crowning if my life depended on it. He is my best friend, after all. Naruto made a slight nod to Sasuke, who merely smirked back. Hinata realized that she barely even scratched the surface about Naruto. She knew now that he grew up as orphan, but he spared the details and how he even ascended to the throne. She was curious to know how he and Sasuke became such good friends even though they grew up in separate kingdoms. Her eyes trailed over to Makoto and Sakura and gathering up some courage to break out of her shell, she stepped forward and warmly greeted them. Queen Makoto, Princess Sakura, it is delightful to be here to celebrate such a joyous moment in the Uchiha Kingdom. Your palace is absolutely beautiful. Makoto blushed faintly at her comment and smiled gracefully at Hinata. Oh, my Empress, you are far too kind with your compliments. We are honored to have both you and the Emperor here to join us, we hope the travel here was pleasant. We're honestly ecstatic to have you here, Empress. Ever since the ceremony, I've been excited to talk to you. I have so much questions, if you don't mind me asking, that is. Sakura chirped happily. Hinata was surprised. She's never had someone look so utterly interested in talking to her. Of course, you may ask anything that comes to mind. Well, let's all save the conversations until we're inside. It is quite cold tonight, so I wouldn't want your majesties to freeze out here. Come, we've prepared a dinner. I'm sure you must be hungry after the travel. Fugaku insisted as he guided them into the palace. On Fugaku's right, sat Sasuke. On his left, Makoto and Sakura. Naruto and Hinata seated themselves across the Uchiha family and everyone indulged themselves in the red wine rosemary steak, fresh miso soup, and various side dishes already prepared on the table. What is the schedule for tomorrow? Naruto asked. We will have a few performances, some singing, some dancing, and we'll be showcasing some of our finest Uchiha warriors for entertainment. Hinata's ear perked at that statement. How interesting would it be to learn different techniques than just her own and what Naruto has been teaching her at the dojo. She wondered if Naruto would allow someone from the Uchiha palace to train her. Out of all the 8 kingdoms, the Hyuga and Uchiha were known to be the kingdoms with the most powerful bloodlines and techniques. It was unheard of for someone in another kingdom to learn the secrets of another kingdom's fighting style, but she was Empress now, she wondered if her position would allow her some freedom to propose that idea. She also knew the risks if she was to learn another royal bloodline's combat style. Technically, each royal family having their own abilities was what made each kingdom unique. It was what made each kingdom both fear and respect each other. If she was to learn another bloodline's combat style, there was a guarantee she'll stir up some controversy. Well, She had to at least try. She promised to herself that she would not be weak anymore. The first step to becoming a great empress is not being afraid to voice her own opinions and ideas, no matter how bold it may be. May I propose something? She boldly announced. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her curiously. He was a bit surprised that she wasn't afraid to speak up, especially since they were in a new environment. Again, she never ceased to amaze him. Fugaku gave her a nod. My empress, your wish is my command. Hinata's hands on her lap clenched tightly at her dress, and despite the feelings of anxiety bubbling up in her, she met his gaze confidently. After Prince Sasuke's coronation, I would like to take some of your best Uchiha fighters back to the Imperial Palace. Fugaku and Sasuke looked at each other with confused faces before they turned back to face her. Why would you insist to take our soldiers? The Uzumaki Kingdom has some of the best warriors in the empire. I'm sure your majesties have more than enough to defend the palace. Hinata shook her head. I am not taking them for the purpose of defending the palace. I intend for them to train me. Her heart thumped at the obvious gasps that echoed throughout the room from both the royalties sitting at the table and the servants surrounding them. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at her. You mean, you want to learn the secrets of our bloodline? Yes. Sasuke turned his attention to Naruto. We've been good friends since childhood. What is the meaning of this? The Empress wants to steal the techniques of the Uchiha family. Before Naruto could speak, Hinata spoke up again. Please, my request has nothing to do with the Emperor. It is for my own interests, and because I am letting you know that I want to learn from the Uchihas, it doesn't really count as stealing. It is for educational purposes, and I would just like to personally grow in terms of my own combat skills. Surely, you would be more confident in an empress who is not weak, but versatile in her battle techniques. Well, damn, it was like a whole other person was living inside her just to pop out for these moments. Naruto was beyond surprised that she even had the guts to ask such a thing. For a royalty to ask another royalty to teach them their fighting styles has never been done in the history of this empire. Even he wouldn't dare to ask that. It was simply an unspoken rule. Just as Sasuke opened his mouth to say something, Fugaku put his hands up to silence him. The Empress has a point. It would be more advantaged to have a ruler who is flexible in their combat skills. However, this would be the first proposal in history to learn another kingdom's fighting attributes. Aren't you worried that other kingdoms will oppose this? I've thought about it, already. However, if I want to become an empress who you, and the rest of the empire, can rely on, I want to be the best that I can and learn from the best. Right now, we are in an era of peace and stability because of the emperor, but, if there was to be any dangers or conflicts in the future against the empire, I want to be able to defend my people. Fugaku glanced over at Sasuke. Well, you are going to be king tomorrow morning. It is your decision whether you want to negotiate this with the Empress or be the first king in history to share our abilities with someone outside the Uchiha household. Sasuke kept his gaze steadily on Hinata, seemingly in deep thought. She was definitely different than who he thought she was. When he first saw her at the ceremony, he expected her to be the quiet and timid type, so he wasn't exactly all proud of Naruto's choice. However, she just might be changing his mind right now. Smirking, he turned to speak to Naruto instead. Actually, I see now that you've made an excellent choice for a bride, my friend. An overly outspoken empress will definitely stir controversy, but I see she speaks wisely and with logic. Consider it done. This will be the first time that our Uchiha techniques will be shared with an outsider. He then shifted his attention to Hinata. I trust that you will use it only in times of need, and I trust that you will honor our bloodline enough that you won't share it with anyone else, aside from the Emperor, that is. Hinata nodded and bowed her head to him. Thank you, you have my word. She suppressed the excited smile that was dying to break out on her face. She actually convinced a prince, well, technically, Sasuke would be king tomorrow, to agree with her proposal. She knew there would far more challenging negotiations in the future, possibly with other kingdoms, but this would be a great start. In all honesty, this was quite fun. She now saw a glimpse of what she was missing this whole time that she shied away in the Hyuga castle. To be able to speak confidently to another noble and have them listen to her instead of looking down on her was pure bliss. She felt Naruto's hand gently placed over hers. She turned to see him smiling affectionately at her, and his approving eyes indicated that he was so proud of her right now. Hinata turned her hand over so that she could entangle her fingers with his. Well, she couldn't take all the credit for her growth, he was the main reason why she even had the courage to break out of her shell. She felt so undeserving of his love for her. She knew that in about 6 months, she would have to answer to him, she just wasn't sure if she would be able to give him the answer he desired. The next morning came all too soon. Hinata was seated next to Naruto in the royal booth hovering above the outdoor stadium. There were noticeably hundreds of people flooding in already, and their chattering echoed loudly throughout the stadium. So, tell me, how did you and Prince Sasuke become best friends? She asked curiously. Naruto crossed his arms and leaned back against his chair. Well, long story short, he was the first kid to defend me when others were bullying me. The Uchiha family was visiting the Uzumaki kingdom, probably to discuss trade matters with the former Uzumaki king. Sasuke sneaked out when his parents were in a royal meeting, and he ended up wandering the streets. I was getting picked on by some kids in the neighborhood. At that time, Kakashi wasn't home, and I tend to go out on my own to cause mischief. Sasuke came at that exact moment they were beating me up, and because he's trained, he of course knew how to fight them off better than I did. Ever since that day he scared them off and held out his hand to me. We've never been separated. I was surprised his parents let him come visit often despite knowing who I was and what I was born with. Hinata's eyebrows went up. That means you've been acquainted with his parents since childhood. Yes, I've known the Uchiha family for almost 15 years now. Wow, Hinata definitely knew little about his past. She never would have thought that Naruto knew the Uchihas for that long. No wonder he was always so casual around Sasuke. Her ears perked up at the sound of trumpets playing and the whole stadium quieted down. Fugaku stood up from his chair in the booth and faced everyone, stretching his arms out as a welcoming gesture. People of the Uchiha kingdom, it's been an absolute pleasure being able to govern as your ruler for the past 25 years. It is time, as tradition, for the heir to come forth to claim his rightful place as the next king. I confidently and proudly announce that Sasuke Uchiha, my only son and heir to the throne, will continue the legacy to guide this kingdom forth in peace and stability as part of the 8 kingdoms under the Uzumaki Empire. Thundering claps and roars of cheers filled the stadium as Sasuke stepped out to face the enormous crowd. He came next to Fugaku and knelt down on one knee, bending his head down. As I step down as king and place my crown on your head, I trust that you will guide this kingdom to prosper and grow in the future. Fugaku reached for his crown, and with both hands, he gently displaced it from his head and hovered it over Sasuke's. Citizens of the Uchiha kingdom, I present to you your new ruler, King Sasuke. With that grand announcement, Fugaku placed the crown on Sasuke's head, officially making Sasuke the new king. Hinata couldn't help but adore the insanely proud look Naruto had on his face as Sasuke got up to face the chanting crowd. Man, to see my best friend become a king and to know he will be a great one is such an inspiring feeling. Hinata reached over and held Naruto's hand. Well, he had you. I think that you two inspire each other and bring out the best of each other. I'm glad we are able to witness this moment in history. Naruto nodded and affectionately squeezed her hand in his. After the official crowning of Sasuke, the stadium stage was filled with entertainment and performers, as Fugaku had mentioned. Hinata was particularly interested when the Uchiha warriors were on stage showcasing their skills. She knew that they were especially skilled with fire and illusion techniques in battle, but actually seeing it in action was far beyond what she imagined. She couldn't wait to be able to train, knowing that she'll acquire more diverse combat skills will surely give her an advantage over her father. She glanced over at Naruto and wondered if she was going to be able to keep this a secret until the very end. To be honest, she felt so guilty about keeping quiet about it. He opened up to her and genuinely confessed that he loves her, and yet, she still couldn't muster up the courage to tell him that she will be challenging her father in just a few months. There was a slight change of hope that he'll support her for standing up for herself, but another part of her was afraid that he might change his feelings towards her if he knew. Maybe he'll think she's naive, maybe even unfit for the throne for doing such a disgraceful thing. She knew that challenging her father would probably be the biggest mistake of her life if it went wrong, but if there was just a glimmer of hope that she could prove her father wrong, she'll take the chance. After the grand coronation, the prestige guests and nobles were invited for a grand lunch buffet and an after-party in the Uchiha dining room. Hinata clung onto Naruto's arm as they navigated through the crowd. "You're holding my arm pretty tight there, Hinata." Naruto leaned down and whispered. Hinata immediately loosened her grip. "Sorry. I'm just adjusting. I've never been surrounded up close by this much people, not even at our wedding ceremony. Yay, the whole Uchiha kingdom is practically invited here today. Just bear with it for a little while longer, okay? We'll be heading home by sunset." Naruto tapped her hand comfortingly. His eyes darted around the crowd and spotted Sasuke and Sakura busy talking to some of the court members and other guests. Hopefully he remembers that some of his warriors are coming with us tonight. Naruto chuckled. "By the way, I was surprised at how you handled that yesterday. I would have never guessed that you would be brave enough to ask to learn the Uchiha's techniques. Even I wouldn't dare to ask." Hinata simply smiled at him. "Well, I wouldn't have had the courage to ask if you haven't taught me to be confident. No, Hinata, I can give you as much advice and inspiring memos as I can, but the ultimate decision comes down to you. I really am proud that you were able to firmly state what you want." Hinata blushed. He was always so encouraging and lifted her spirits up. When she really thought about it, she owed him her life. He's done nothing but support her since day one and loved her with every sheer ounce of his being. The thing was, even if she ended up falling for him in the end, how would she even know? She never knew how it was like to love a man, she wasn't exactly sure how it was supposed to feel like. "We should go visit your family sometime this week. It's been a while since the wedding," Naruto suggested. "It's okay, we don't have to." Hinata answered a bit too quickly. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Hinata, we cannot avoid your family affairs forever. There has to be a time where we discuss the problems between you and them. Besides, you are the Empress now, what they say about you does not define you anymore." Hinata let out a small sigh, knowing that what he said was true. She just wasn't ready to face them yet. "I know. I mean, I don't mind visiting them. It's just, we aren't exactly close to where I can greet them with a hug." "Well then, that's where I come in. Don't worry, I can ease the tension. I'm good at that." Hinata laughed softly at his confidence. "Well then, when do we go?" Naruto grinned at her and leaned in to give her a light kiss on the head. "We'll visit in 7 days. 5 days of training with the Uchiha Imperial Guards were absolutely grueling." Hinata never knew true exhaustion until now. Fire techniques were not in her field of expertise, so learning how to control the heat energy that came out of her body was challenging. Steadying her breathing, she composed herself and bowed to the 3 Uchiha guards to end the training session for today. She then dismissed them to rest before heading over to the Uzumaki garden to see Naruto. She noticed that he often went to go admire the flowers when the sun was the highest in the sky. "Your Majesty," she greeted when she saw him standing next to the roses. Naruto turned and his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Hinata, I do wish you would start calling me by name." Hinata blushed and shook her head. "As I've said before, it wouldn't be decent to address you so casually." She stopped when he suddenly put his hand up, silencing her. Naruto let out a sigh. "When it's just you and me, it's okay to be casual, Hinata." He gently plucked a small rose and walked over to her, tucking it perfectly on the side of her hair. "How was the training? Hard, but manageable. It's still difficult for me to control heat energy. I guarantee that before we go visit your family in 2 days, you'll master the techniques. Hinata wasn't sure about that. She felt like it would take weeks before she actually had complete control of her new skills. Are you nervous, though? About your family? It's not that I'm nervous. I just don't know what to expect. Naruto held her hand and pulled her along with him on the garden trail. I think that you just need to take the first step to initiate a good relationship with your family. I will help guide you. He hoped that she will open up to him a bit more about her family. In order for him to help, she had to at least allow herself to trust him. So, first things first. Tell me about your family. Let's start with your little sister. Hanabi, was it? Hinata nodded. Naruto noticed how her expression softened at the mention of her sister. Hanabi is the only one I am close with. Though she excels far above me in almost everything, she was the only one who didn't look down on me. I know she pities me, though. We both know that she can't do anything to change my parents' view of me. Out of everyone living in that household, she's the one I miss the most. And your mother? Hinata's jaw tightened at the mention of her mother. She never saw her mother as a mother figure at all. My mother was hardly a mother to me. I don't have any memories of her comforting me or caring for me at all. From as young as I can remember, our servants and maids tend to me only. She never spent time with me or my sister. She's always stood in the shadow of my father, and followed whatever he did and thought. Naruto's heart ached at her description of her mother. That meant that she never even knew a mother's love before. That was something they had in common. He would have never guessed that Hinata's relationship with her mother was almost non-existent. He took a deep breath before he asked the next question, knowing very well that Hiashi was the one who had the most effect on her. Your father. Hinata could never stop the flood of emotions that consumed her at the mention of her father. It was always anger, sorrow, and an overwhelming feeling of depression whenever she thought about how everyone in the palace treated her because of her father. I don't know if I am ready to talk about him to the full extent, yet. I'm sorry. Naruto stopped walking and turned to face her, pulling her closer. Please, I want to help you. Whatever you are bottling in about your father, you can let it all out to me. He could see the hesitation in her eyes and sighed. What are you afraid of, Hinata? Hinata swallowed and wouldn't look at him in the eyes. I don't want to cry in front of you, my emperor. If I talk about my father, I don't know if I can hold it in. She hated how her voice was already starting to tremble. She was good at keeping her emotions stable, and bottling it in was all she's ever known. However, with Naruto, she didn't know why everything seemed to come out all at once. Naruto could only sigh again. Why couldn't she understand that it was okay to be herself in front of him? She didn't need to act all proper and composed all the time. He was her husband, her life partner, and the very person she was going to grow old and be with for the rest of her life. Why are you afraid to cry in front of me? He whispered and boldly leaned forward to put his forehead on hers. I am here so that you can cry. I will be here to wipe every single tear that falls from your eyes, Hinata. The love that your family never gave you. I am here to give you that love 100 times more. Damn it. He always knew what to say. Before the tears dropped from her eyes, she leaned forward to bury her face in his shoulder. Naruto wrapped his arms around her and his heart shattered at how she trembled, as if the sorrow from her heart completely overflowed to the rest of her body. You can let go, Hinata. It's okay to cry. He finally heard her let out a quiet whimper and felt her hands grasping his shirt tightly. He couldn't even fathom the pain she was feeling. Sure, he grew up being teased and looked down upon as a child because of his fox powers, and never knew his parents, but in the end, he had Kakashi there to fill the void of a loving family. Hinata, on the other hand, had her family there right in front of her, but lived as if she was a true orphan, knowing only neglect, silence, and cold shoulders for the past 20 years. He promised that from now on, he would do whatever it takes to heal her brokenness. He pulled away to take a good look at her, but she still refused to meet his gaze. Hinata, look at me. Naruto muttered softly, lifting her chin up. When she finally gathered the courage to face him, he wiped the tears that were still streaming down her face and fought the urge to just kiss her right there and then. His eyes trailed from her beautiful lavender orbs, down the shape of her nose, and then lingered on her slightly parted lips. Do you feel at least a little better after letting it out? Hinata was choked up from crying, so all she could do was nod at him. She also wasn't oblivious to where his eyes were. She knew that he probably wanted to kiss her, considering how close they were, but was holding back. Her heart was beating like crazy at what she was thinking about doing right now, but she didn't want to be unfair to him anymore. With all that he's done for her, he at least deserved this. Drowning out everything around her, she closed her eyes and leaned up, closing the gap separating his lips from hers. It took a moment for Naruto to even register what just happened. Finally letting go of all restraint, he almost growled at the lusciousness of her lips and kissed her back with a passion that made Hinata's knees go completely numb. He felt her body seemingly melt in his arms and he held her tighter, savoring her warmth. Hinata slowly pulled back and thought she felt like she would die of embarrassment. She still dared herself to look into his eyes. Her heart swelled when she noticed how incredibly happy he looked. Did I do that right? Naruto tried to resist, but ended up chuckling at her adorably innocent question. That was perfect, my queen. So, does this mean I get permission to kiss you whenever I want to, now? Hinata turned red. I'm just kidding, Hinata. Relax. I won't do anything unless you're okay with it. Naruto laughed and wiped away the remaining tears from her face. He finally gave her some distance as he took a step back from her. As for your father, we still have 2 days until we visit your family, so, whenever you're ready to open up and tell me about him, I'll be all ears. As Hinata watched as he resumed to admiring the flowers in front of him, she couldn't help but change her mind. After they go visit her family, she figured that it would be okay for her to let him know about the bet. She will just have to take her chances and trust that he will still be on her side after knowing the truth. Today was the day. Hinata woke up bright and early because she just could not sleep. She's been thinking about the Hyugas and what the visit would even be like. What could they possibly have to talk about for a whole day? She knew Naruto was going to do most of the talking, but she also knew she couldn't stay mute the whole time there. She just couldn't converse with them like how she did with other royalties. It was weird to ask them how they were doing, or if they've been well, because she knew they would probably give her brief and to the point answers. They weren't much for small talk. She heard a knock on the door and peeked to see Kakashi bowing to her. Empress, the Emperor has requested your presence for breakfast this morning. How surprising. Naruto was usually up at the crack of dawn to tend to business. He was hardly ever there when she woke up, and she often ate breakfast without him. It was only in the afternoon, when it was time for her training, that he would show up to greet her and spend the rest of the day with her. Thank you, Kakashi. I'll be down in a few minutes. Kakashi gave her small nod before he descended down the stairs and disappeared from view. Hinata got out of bed and let out a small yawn before she clapped twice to call for the maids. 4 maids came trickling into the bedroom and bowed their heads to greet her. Good morning. Hinata smiled at them. I'd like a bold dress today. Something to state confidence, yet still modest at the same time. Would you ladies mind finding one for me? Yes, Your Majesty. The maids all nodded before they walked over to Hinata and Naruto's walk-in closet. As Hinata waited for them, she went over to part the curtains and gazed down at her beloved kingdom. She could see the smoke rising from the food markets and saw that the people were already starting their day. What a beautiful thing it was, that she went from a princess who shied away from her own people, to an empress who now couldn't wait to greet them. She had to admit that there was a significant change from when she first arrived to the Uzumaki Palace and now. She didn't necessarily feel shy anymore, and she was learning to embrace her position as a queen over 8 kingdoms. She owed it all to Naruto, of course. Her cheeks flushed when she suddenly thought about the kiss she gave him 2 days ago. She didn't know that a kiss could feel that good, or maybe it was because of the way he kissed her back so passionately. She swore that she would have fainted if he wasn't holding her. Ever since then, she's found herself yearning for him more often. She wanted to see him and be in his presence. It was strange because she knew she was acting different, but she still couldn't stop herself. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see the maids holding a beautiful long dress in a deep navy blue color. They held it up for her to see and her eyes lit up in approval. The dress flowed down to the floor, with the bottom lightly sequenced with small diamonds and the sleeves were off the shoulder. Perfect. Thank you. Naruto's jaw almost dropped when he saw her come into the dining hall. Sure, she looked breathtaking in whatever she wore, but it seemed like she took an extra measure today to look twice as good. What's the special occasion? You look amazing, my love. Hinata blushed at his compliment. Well, we are visiting my family today. I should at least put a little effort into it. Naruto nearly scoffed and shook his head. You don't even need to put effort, Hinata. You could be absolutely flawless wearing just one of my sleeping shirts. He chuckled lightly at her timid expression as she took her seat next to him. So, why did you decide to have breakfast with me today? Are there no matters to attend to this morning? Hinata asked curiously. At the wave of his hand, one of the chefs came out with 2 plates and placed it in front of them. Hinata's stomach grumbled when the delicious smell of the teriyaki glazed salmon and freshly steamed rice hit her nose. Well, it just hit me earlier when I was looking at the food market revenue of the kingdoms that I don't spend enough mornings with you just enjoying a simple breakfast together. You know, small moments like these might seem irrelevant, but when we look back 50 years later, it will become one of our favorite things to do. Hinata never even thought about that. He was right though, small moments together like this was what made quality time so special. She wondered if her parents ever shared these special moments. It then dawned on her that maybe her parents never showed her any affectionate love because that was what they were taught their whole lives. Maybe growing up, her father was groomed to become a king, so he had to shape his personality accordingly to what was expected of him. Maybe her mother was taught to be a proper noble woman who lived to appease her husband because she was fated to become betrothed to either a king or a nobleman. Maybe, they never even knew what it was like to be in love. They never knew how it felt like to indulge in and enjoy each other's company. They just grew up with a strict childhood, married each other due to royal ties, and had children to continue the bloodline. Love, affection, warmth, all the things she ever yearned for, her parents might have never gotten the chance to even experience it. So how could they show it to her when they didn't know how to? It never occurred to her that that was the case. If what she was thinking was actually true, then it raised the question, did she even have a right to be angry at her family? She turned to look at Naruto and gazed at him for a moment, slowly coming to a conclusion on her fate. Out of anyone that he could have chosen, he chose her. She was the Empress of the 8 kingdoms. Now that she has such a powerful title over her father, it gave her an advantage. Maybe it was fate that she became Empress so that she could slowly warm the hearts of the Hyuga household. She could help them change, just like how Naruto has helped her to change. How nostalgic it was to see the Hyuga palace again. Hinata gazed out the carriage, her eyes glued to the castle door to see if her family would come out to greet them. Surely, they have received the message that she and the Emperor were visiting, and knowing her father, he wouldn't miss an opportunity to welcome the Emperor in. They stopped at the entrance of the beautiful carved wooden doors and as expected, it opened to reveal Hiashi first, followed by her mother and Hanabi, then the court members. Naruto stepped out first and reached out his hand to her to help her off the carriage. Emperor, it is absolutely an honor to have you here again. Hiashi greeted as he made a small bow to Naruto. The honor is mine. It's been 6 months, so I figured it would be nice for Hinata and I to pay a visit. Of course. We are happy to see our daughter again. She seems well cared for, just as you've promised me. Hinata was a bit taken by surprise by her father's words. They were happy to see her. That was an interesting and totally out of character thing for him to say. Come, let us discuss matters of the kingdom. I haven't had the chance to thank you for the generous gifts you have bestowed after the wedding. Naruto nodded at Hiyashi's request and turned to Hinata. I would like to talk to your father one-on-one, if that is okay with you. Perhaps you can spend some time with your mother and Hanabi. Naruto knew that she would be nervous if he left her alone, but he wanted to push her to break her comfort zone. She had to learn how to take initiative if she was going to improve her relationship with them. He gave her an encouraging nod, hoping that she would agree to do this on her own. Hinata's heart thumped. Though she desperately wished to stay by his side the entire time, she knew she would have to eventually break the ice with her family. She wasn't going to waste all those times where he's taught her about confidence. Of course. She forced a smile at him and watched with a weary heart as he and her father left to the Hyuga Gardens. She took a deep breath and shifted her attention to her mother and Hanabi, and the trail of court members behind them. Well, she was the Empress. If both the Emperor and the Hyuga King were gone, it would only make sense that she held the upper position here. She looked over to the court members and waved her hand to the side in one swift motion. You all are dismissed. Please allow some privacy for us. She could see a flicker of surprise in almost everyone's eyes at her firm tone of voice. She raised an eyebrow when the court members all stole glances at each other and at Hinata's mother, unsure of what to do. She then realized that they were all so used to her silence and shy demeanor that it was almost shocking to take an order from her. Boldly, she took a step forward and narrowed her eyes at them. It was almost offensive of how hesitant they were to listen to her. Must the Empress repeat herself? Wow. Referring to herself in third person was strangely empowering. With that statement, the court members all swallowed the lump in their throats and bowed. Quote. Yes, Your Majesty. They replied in unison before they turned around and walked back through the palace's front doors. I see you've made improvements to yourself. Her mother finally spoke up. Hinata tried not to take that personally. Yay, you seem really different, Hinata. In a good way. Hanabi's eyes traveled up and down her attire. By the way, the Emperor has been treating you well, hasn't he? That dress is definitely not one you could find in this kingdom. Isn't it beautiful on her, mother? Hanabi gleamed at their mother. Hinata's mother stayed quiet for a few moments, but eventually gave an approving nod. Well, of course, the Empress must wear nothing less than the best in the kingdom. Come, we should talk inside. So tell us, Hinata, how is it like in the Uzumaki Palace? Hanabi asked as she led them back inside towards the grand dining hall. It's wonderful. The palace is enormous, carved from the finest marble and jewels. It also has a garden at least 3 times larger than the one here. I'd love to take you to see it one day. And how is the Emperor? He is incredibly handsome. Hanabi, watch your mouth. Don't spew such openly flirtatious comments like that, especially when the Emperor is your sister's husband, now. Their mother scolded and scowled at Hanabi. Hanabi sighed and almost rolled her eyes, but composed herself and nodded instead. Yes, mother. Hinata could only laugh lightly at her sister's audacious attitude. She knew that if Hanabi at one point wanted to rebel her position as a princess and just go rogue, she could totally do it. Hanabi's bold personality and her willingness to take risks is what made their father so fond of her. He always praised her for her strength in combat and also in conversations. One could never grow tired of talking to Hanabi. She always knew how to keep an audience interested, whether it be a casual or formal discussion. Taking their seats at the long dining table, Hinata glanced at her mother, thinking of something to say. She and her mother never conversed much, so it was always hard to initiate a conversation. Mother, how has the kingdom been prospering with the supplies from the Emperor? The kingdom was always a topic that Hinata knew she could talk to her parents about. It was sad that it always the only thing they talked about, though. Well, that was going to change today. She was determined to at least make some progress in her relationship with her mother. Splendid. We are thriving more than ever, thanks to the generous gifts of the Emperor. Our people have never been happier with the extra supplies of food and agriculture. Your father did well distributing to the citizens so that each family had rations appropriate to their household size. What about you and father? Have you two been well? Hinata dared to ask. She could see the change in her mother's expression, as if that question was totally unexpected. It was never a normal thing for Hyugas to ask about each other's well-being. It was always about duty, the kingdom, formalities, and the such. Maybe what Hinata thought about earlier was true, that her parents never experienced a kind of love that they knew how to pass down. We are doing what we can do to help the kingdom prosper. Your father and I have. No, mother. Hinata interrupted, which was quite a surprise for both her mother and Hanabi. I didn't mean to ask about how you two are doing concerning the Hyuga kingdom. I mean to ask if you two are well, in terms of your well-being and happiness. There was a moment of silence, as if Hinata's mother didn't quite understand the question. My Empress, our happiness and well-being is not a topic of importance. I would be more glad to discuss and listen to what you have been doing to improve the 8 kingdoms as the Emperor's bride. Hinata could only sigh before she continued. Maybe it isn't important to you, but it is to me. For the past 20 years, I have never seen you smile at me, nor even at Hanabi, even though she makes you and father proud. Is it so wrong to be a queen who displays kindness and a friendly face? Her mother immediately scowled at her. It seems you have not learned anything we've taught you. The Emperor must be tired of dealing with your lack of etiquette and manners. If Hinata was the same as she was 6 months ago, she would have probably apologized and stayed quiet. Instead, she gathered the courage to keep her gaze steady and firm at her mother before speaking. On the contrary, the Emperor wishes that I would lose my proper etiquette when around him. He wants me to be more casual and open with him. He's taught me to value myself in ways that I never thought was possible. More than that, he's taught me that a good queen should be benevolent and generous more so often than she is assertive and authoritative. She paused and softened her gaze at her mother, hoping that she could slowly earn the love of the woman who gave birth to her. I understand your duty as a queen to this kingdom. However, when you're around me and Hanabi, please. I ask that above all else, you be a mother to us. Hanabi blinked astonishingly at Hinata's words. To hear that coming from Hinata almost made her want to cry. Though they both never spoke of it, both of them knew in their hearts that they yearned for their mother's affection. Their mother stayed quiet once again and nonchalantly averted her eyes down. She then let out a slow sigh before she spoke. I don't expect you two to understand until you've had children of your own. I am the Hyuga queen above all else, even above being a mother. Hinata's heart broke. Was it really impossible to change their perspectives? If her mother was like this, it would be even harder to soften Hiyashi's cold demeanor. However, she knew it wasn't something to expect overnight. It would take progress to gradually change her parents' view of parenting, and even their view of ruling the Hyuga kingdom. Mother, do you think the Emperor is someone trustworthy enough to lead all 8 kingdoms to prosper in the next 20 years? Well, of course. He did unite us when all we thought about was conquering each other. He's the reason for our era of peace. Then, what qualities about him are admirable? Hinata urged on. Hinata's mother pondered for a few moments before answering. He is very likable, young, full of charisma, and has the aura and energy of a leader. He has also proved himself to be stronger than any king we've known in battle. When he speaks, he does so with authority, knowing his place as the emperor over our empire. I am a bit confused as to why you would ask this question. You are the Empress, you should know best what qualities about him make him an exceptional ruler. Hinata made a small smile. She felt special that she was the only one who saw Naruto behind doors, who he really was. Sure, he was a great emperor, but more than that, he was a wonderful husband and a man of virtue and kindness. As the Empress, I want to know others' perspectives of my husband. It gives me a greater evaluation of how he is doing to uphold this empire, and it also keeps me in check so that I can follow in his footsteps as his wife. Hinata saw a flicker of interest in her mother's eyes. That's the wisest thing I've ever heard you say. I hope you keep up this attitude to make up for what you fell short of in the past. If you had been like this earlier, your father wouldn't be so harsh on you. Again, Hinata tried not to take her mother's comments to heart. Though it still hurts, she remembered Naruto's words, that she was the Uzumaki Empress, now. What they said about her did not define her anymore. Instead of saying something witty back, she kept her composure and chose to think positively instead. Quote. I will be an empress that you both will be proud of, mother. That's a promise. Our kingdom has prospered tremendously due to the supplies, your majesty. Yes, I saw the improvements on the reports back at the Uzumaki Palace. Ah, of course. Hiashi paused for a moment. My daughter. I do hope she hasn't been causing you any trouble. Naruto blinked. Heavens, no. If anything, she's made everything go by a lot smoother. Her extensive knowledge of handling the empire's economic efficiency is truly remarkable. He noticed that Hiashi seemed a bit surprised at such words of praise about Hinata. If you don't me asking, why is that you are always concerned about her? My daughter has always been lacking in certain qualities. As the first princess to our throne, I have long desired for her to be someone who is strong and bold in character. She proved to be the complete opposite of that, too generous, too kind, and incredibly timid. Someone with such weak characteristics will be taken advantage of in the future. Hiashi frowned. That is why I am worried that she may not be up to your standards, your majesty. Naruto now understood why Hinata was the way she was. Her father's demeaning view of her has constantly beat her down for her entire life. Well, on the contrary, Hinata has proven herself to be nothing short of excellence. She's quite above my standards, if I'm being honest. She learns quick and is observant of how we do things in my palace. I have put her in charge of the trade system, so she's been facilitating the monetary flow between the kingdoms. I can say with confidence that she is exactly what this empire needs. Hiashi raised an eyebrow. Interesting. In all my years of observing her, I don't even think that she is fitting to be of royalty. I'm surprised you would even put her in such a vital role. I understand that she may not meet your expectations, but she really is incredible. I put her in charge of the trade system because I trust in her abilities. Also, with all due respect, I do hope that you can try to see the positive things about her. She is, after all, my wife now, and she is the empress of this empire. I would like you to speak of her with more respect. Hiashi cleared his throat lightly and bowed his head. Of course. I apologize if my words were a bit harsh. They continued to walk along the trail, lined with marble stones and lavender flowers swaying along with the light breeze of air. Lavenders remind me of Hinata. I'm surprised you have so much planted in this garden. Hiashi slowed and glanced down at the purple flowers. Well, that's the precise reason why I had them planted. That took Naruto by surprise. You planted them for Hinata. When she was 4, she had mentioned that they were her favorite. Ah, how interesting. So Hiashi could say all the harsh things in the world about Hinata, but then plant a garden full of her favorite flowers. Maybe there was a little soft spot in Hiyashi's heart for her. So tell me. Naruto flashed a smile and crossed his arms. Is there anything about your daughter that you admire? Surely, there must be at least one thing. There was a brief moment of silence. Naruto knew that it was probably not a question that anyone's ever asked Hiashi before. He also knew that Hiashi probably was so used to criticizing all that Hinata did wrong, that it was hard to come up with something positive about her. It was becoming clear now, why Hinata had so much problems with her family. They expected too much out of her. Instead of loving her and encouraging her to be a good princess, they constantly scolded her and harbored such negativity about her. It definitely was not a healthy way of helping her to become what they wanted in a Hyuga daughter. Well, she is academically intelligent. Since she lacks strength in combat, I figured that she could at least be diligent in her studies. I had the best scholars in the kingdom to come teach her just about everything there is to know in arithmetic, history, writing, and science. Naruto was glad that Hiashi was able to at least acknowledge one positive thing about Hinata. He figured he could start probing deeper into Hinata's childhood since they were here. He not only wanted to help Hinata, but he also wanted to open Hiyashi's eyes to see that Hinata was not as weak as he thought she was. What would it take for you to say you are proud of her? Hiyashi let out a small chuckle. Your Majesty, what makes you think I am not proud of my daughter? Naruto was confused yet again. You mentioned that she lacks everything you desired in a Hyuga princess. Yes, she is lacking as a Hyuga princess. She is not fit for royalty, as I've said, but I never said she was unfit as a daughter. Oh, boy, in other words, Hiyashi does love Hinata, but just not in the way that Hinata wanted. That also means that there was room for improvement. If Hiyashi sees for himself how much she's grown in the position of being the Empress, Naruto was sure that the tension could be broken. Naruto couldn't wait to tell Hinata this. Maybe, it wouldn't be such a challenge to bring together the Hyuga family after all. Hinata was quite regretful that they only had time to visit the Hyuga kingdom for one day. It's been about 2 weeks since then, but she couldn't help but feel like they could have stayed a little longer. She was beginning to understand why her mother was the way she was. All her mother ever knew was to be a good queen and a respectable noblewoman. Things such as happiness and affection didn't matter. If Hinata could slowly show them the love and warmth that Naruto's been showering on her, she was sure that they will come to acknowledge that there is so much more to life than just following the rules of being royalty. She didn't have much time with her father, since he and Naruto were preoccupied talking to each other most of the time. In a sense, it was a relief that she didn't have time to converse with her father. They've never had a conversation where he didn't lecture her or put her down. As of now, she was heading towards the dojo to start her training for the day. She finally mastered the techniques from the Uchihas and Naruto had informed her that today's training was special. She wondered who would be training her today. She knew she has improved significantly, but she wasn't sure if all that she's learned will be enough to beat her father. Though, to be honest, she was reconsidering her bet. Was it really worth it to keep it now that she had a deeper understanding of why her parents acted so cold? She remembered she also mentioned that every single person in the Hyuga Imperial Palace will kneel down to her. It wasn't really fair on her part to make the court members, servants, and maids to kneel when she knew that the only reason they looked down on her was because her father influenced them. They probably didn't have any personal ill feelings towards her. She also felt as if her feelings of resentment towards her parents weren't as strong anymore. It would still feel great to have them apologize to her for how they've treated her, but, to have them kneel for 20 days in front of her was a bit over the top now that she really thought about it. She will just have to reevaluate where she stands in her relationship with them in the next year. Finally reaching the dojo, she greeted the 2 guards who stood by the door before they opened it to reveal Naruto standing in the middle of the room. Her heart fluttered when his face immediately lit up when he saw her. She also noticed he wasn't in his usual formal attire, but was instead wearing a more loose-fitting and casual outfit. Your Majesty. Are you training me today? Well, not necessarily train, but I just wanted to assess how much you've learned. I figured that you could take a break from training and enjoy a good sparring session with me. Hinata felt a bit nervous. She hasn't seen the full extent of what he's capable of, so she didn't know what to expect. With the fox's power and the endless rumors of how powerful he was, she was afraid that she might not even be able to lay a finger on him. Hinata, don't doubt yourself. I am not here to judge you. I simply want to see how much you've improved. Goodness, again with the mind reading. She wondered why he always said the exact right thing to calm down the worries that consumed her thoughts. Okay, but I probably won't be able to beat you. Naruto chuckled. Well, that's not the point. Again, this is just an observation of your skills. He urged her to come closer and ordered the guards to shut the door behind her. Hinata took a deep breath and slowly shifted into a defense stance. She was a bit confused as to why Naruto just stood there, looking relaxed. Are you ready, Your Majesty? Naruto nodded at her. Yes, I'm ready as can be. Come at me. Hinata closed her eyes, tried to relax herself and thought about all that she's learned up till now. Byakugan, she whispered as she activated her bloodline's power and could feel the energy coursing through her veins. Since he seemed to be waiting for her to make the first move, she dashed towards him in a blink of an eye and tried to kick him off his feet, but gasped when he dodged her swiftly. She felt him tap her once gently on the shoulder, but somehow, she ended up flying across the room and hit the floor with a loud thud. Her eyebrows furrowed and she rose her head up to look at him in disbelief. How could you have that much force in such a gentle touch? I can teach you once you've shown me what you're capable of. Naruto replied as he beckoned her to attack once again. Hinata didn't waste any time and quickly disappeared and reappeared behind him. With full force, she raised her arm up to hit him on the back with her palm, but his body seemed to move so flexibly as if he was fluid and all she came into contact with was air. Letting out a small growl of frustration, she continued trying to hit him at close distance, applying everything she remembered about her training with Guy. As fast as she was, Naruto seemed to be 2 steps ahead of her, blocking and dodging with complete ease. Why aren't you attacking back? She narrowed her eyes at him. My Empress, I wouldn't want you flying across the room again. Naruto simply stated, which got her kind of irritated. She was beginning to see a glimpse of why the other kings of the 8 kingdoms would willingly submit to him. It wasn't even 10 minutes into sparring with him, that she knew he had the kind of power that was utterly unmatched. No matter how many times she tried to attack and no matter how she used her Byakugan to her advantage, she really couldn't even lay one finger on him. She was sure that he wasn't even depending on the 9-tailed fox's power right now, too. Her breathing became shallow and she took a few steps away from him to distance herself. He was incredibly fast and with her Byakugan, she could see that his eyes followed her movements without missing a beat, which was quite unbelievable, considering that she was pretty quick herself. Your movements have improved significantly from when you first started training. Naruto applauded her. You're a lot more quick and swifter in the way you deliver your punches and kicks. They're not sloppy and I can tell you aren't holding back any of your strength. He rubbed both of his forearms and laughed lightly. You really are strong, Hinata. Hinata was surprised when Naruto suddenly shifted into an attack position. She glared at him and stood on guard, ready to defend herself. This time, I'll come at you to see your defense skills. Ready. As soon as Hinata nodded, he was already in front of her. She gasped and quickly raised her arms to block his hit. A drop of sweat dripped down her forehead as she used her Byakugan to observe every single one of his oncoming attacks. She winced when he managed to trick her that he was going to kick her off her feet, but then stepped back last minute when she was about to use her feet to block him. He then grabbed her by her waist and flipped her over to the ground. Hinata let out a small yelp when a sharp pain coursed through her upper back and felt Naruto immediately lean back away from her. Hinata, are you okay? He asked when he noticed her pained expression. Yes, just. I wasn't expecting that. Hinata reassured him and slowly got back up. Naruto sighed in relief and watched as she brushed off the dust from her pants and once again readied herself for his attacks. Please, do not go easy on me just because I got hurt. Ah, he was so insanely proud of her for that. As you wish, my queen. Hinata concentrated the heat energy from the core of her body to flow into her hands and decided that now would be a good time to put what she's learned from the Uchihas into action. As her eyes calculated and estimated exactly where he was going to attack her this time, she quickly performed some hand signs before he reached her and formed an "oh" with her hands on her lips. Naruto's eyes widened as a burst of flame unexpectedly came out of Hinata's mouth as she blew into the O-shaped form of her hands. He smirked proudly at the fact that she was able to even successfully do that. He knew fire was out of the Hyuga's expertise, so the fact that she was able to concentrate and control the outburst of the flame was absolutely outstanding. Nonetheless, even though it surprised him, he quickly hand-signed to perform a water technique. Hinata watched in disbelief as Naruto jumped right into the flame, but outstretched his palm to touch it first. As soon as the fire came into contact with his palm, the flame instantly turned into ice and dropped down onto the ground. As stunned as she was, she didn't let her guard down and silently cheered in victory when she managed to reach out to grab his hand and aggressively pulled him towards her. She knew that he was probably gonna counterattack, so instead of making a move to knock him off his feet at that instant, she reached for his shirt with her free hand and pulled him close so that his face was inches away from hers. Naruto froze and all thoughts were wiped blank when he felt her lips pressed firmly against his. Whoa. Just. Whoa. As Hinata predicted, she knew he let his guard down at that instant. When she broke away and gave him a sweet smile, Naruto didn't expect anything that was going to happen next. He grunted when Hinata, who still had a hold of his shirt, with all her might, threw him up towards the air and jumped up along with him. She raised her leg up and again, not holding back any strength, slammed it down on his stomach and kicked him down to the ground. Naruto let out a painful cough as he impacted harshly with the floor below him and felt the wooden boards beneath him crack. He panted and opened his eyes to see Hinata standing in front of him, looking a little too happy that she somehow, finally, was able to successfully counterattack him. The traditional art of seduction, Naruto raised an eyebrow. Hinata blushed. Well, that was the only way I knew you'd let down your guard. Not fair, Hinata. Naruto got up and looked down at the cracked floorboards. Sorry, Hinata muttered when she realized the damaged wood. It's okay. We need to remodel this place anyways. Naruto shrugged. So, he crossed his arms and smirked at her. Is this gonna be a thing, now? Kissing me to catch me by surprise? Hinata could feel her cheeks flushing. Like I said, it was the only thing I could think of in the moment. You really are witty, my queen. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. Honestly, that was a really smart move. It tells me that you know how to use an enemy's weakness against them. In my case, you know very well that you are my weakness. Well, that's not very good, Your Majesty. That means an enemy can use me against you. True. Well then, Naruto sighed. One day, you'll probably be the death of me. I love you that much. He flashed her a warm smile before he picked up his robe and slid it back on. Hinata always felt that stab of guilt in her stomach whenever he tells her he loves her. And right now, what he just said, meant that if the circumstances came to it, he would even die for her. Just how in the world did she get so lucky that she was able to get a husband who loves her with every sheer ounce of his being? It was a love that she couldn't even comprehend. She felt as if even if she spent her whole life trying to make up for how much he loved her, it wouldn't even be enough. That's enough for today. I will assess you on your weaponry skills another day. Come, let's go to the village. It's been a while since I've visited my people. Naruto replied as he made his way to the door. Wait. Hinata stopped him. She figured that since they were alone right now, it would be a good time to finally tell him about the bet. She didn't know if she would get the courage to tell him again. She needed to do it now, or she'll probably hesitate the next time. Naruto turned to look at her and noticed that she looked a bit distressed. Hinata, you okay? Yes. Hinata took a deep breath. Even if he was going to be mad or disappointed at her, she owed him the truth. It wasn't fair that she kept hiding this from him. I have something that I need to tell you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What is it? The reason why I want to be stronger. I think I'm ready to tell you. Naruto's expression turned serious. He walked over to her and reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. Hinata, I don't want you to tell me just because you feel bad for not being able to answer to my feelings. I can tell that every time I say those 3 words to you, you seem to freeze up or go into a state of complete guilt. If you feel like you aren't ready to answer me yet, whether it's about my feelings, or whether it's about telling me the goal behind your desire to become stronger, it's okay. Only tell me if you really are ready to open up to me. Hinata didn't know if it was because she was easy to read through or if he was just an expert at guessing how people felt in the moment. Nonetheless, she did feel like she was ready to open up to him. She squeezed his hands gently and nodded at him. Just as you've been honest and transparent with me, I want to be honest and transparent with you, too. Like you keep telling me, you are my husband and my life partner. I've been afraid to tell you because I don't want you to see me differently, and I admit that I am still scared, but I want you to know the truth, regardless. Naruto nodded at her and made a small, encouraging smile. As I've promised, I will accept all of you, Hinata. Both the good and bad. Hinata let out a deep sigh before she spoke again. She wondered if he would stop training her if he disapproved of her bet with her father. If he did stop training her, she didn't know what she would do. Will she really have to just accept her fate of having her Byakugan stripped if she lost? Well, she really shouldn't think of the worst scenario, yet. I want to get stronger, because I want to be able to earn my father's respect. Naruto nodded again, urging her to continue. Before you came to take me as your bride, I made a bet with my father. Okay, now that was interesting. A bet, yes. I told him that on the 1-year anniversary of our marriage, when it is his tradition for the father to bestow a gift to us, that I wanted something else instead. And what exactly did you propose? Hinata swallowed the air stuck in her throat. Well, I told him that instead of a gift, I wanted to challenge him to a duel. Ah, and there was that silent pause as she expected. She watched as Naruto blinked both in curiosity and in confusion. So you challenged your father to a duel? As in, a fighting duel? Yes. So what exactly was the bet? If my father wins, then my Byakugan will be sealed. Permanently. It was hard to get those words out. Her Byakugan was one of the things she was proud to have as a Hyuga. If she really did lose and had it sealed, then she didn't how she would cope with it. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He would take away your very rights to own your own bloodline's technique. He couldn't help but feel angry at Hiashi. He knew for a fact that Hiashi didn't think Hinata fitted the Hyuga name, but to say he'll seal her Byakugan was too much. Hinata, what if you win? If I win, then I told them that every member in the Hyuga household will kneel and bow to me for 20 days for how they've treated me the last 20 years. Well, damn, that was unexpectedly hardcore of her. Your Majesty, what are your thoughts right now? Hinata asked quietly. He looked like he was still processing all that she just told him. For a daughter to challenge her own father to a fight is indecent, I know. Are you disappointed in me? Frankly, yes, I am. Though it was an answer she was preparing herself for, she couldn't help but feel a total weight of devastation on her shoulders. So you've been training because you want to beat your father and ultimately have the entire Hyuga household bow down to you. That was my initial request, yes, but I don't know, now. When we visited my parents, I had the chance to speak to my mother. I realized that she is the way she is because of the way she was brought up. She has been trained to become a wife of either a king or a nobleman, so that's all she's ever known. How could she pass on a love of a mother to me when possibly, her own mother didn't even show it to her? That's why, now that I really think about the consequences of the bet, it does seem a bit harsh. It's more than just harsh, Hinata. It's quite unrealistic. Do you think that by defeating your father and forcing them to bow to you based on a bet will gain their respect? Hinata was a bit taken back by his tone. Never has he spoken to her in such a voice that was lecturing her like she was a child who made a mistake. I assumed it would. Do you think anyone in their right minds would respect someone who makes them kneel with their heads to the ground for 20 days? Realistically, Kneeling and bowing is already a tiring thing to do. How do you expect for them to do it for 20 straight days? And does that include nights, too? What about you? Will you just be sitting on the throne or standing in front of them for those 20 days? Have you even considered all these other factors? Hinata sure felt incredibly stupid right now. She couldn't even say anything back to him. Naruto let go of her hands and pinched the bridge of his nose. He closed his eyes and let out a distressed sigh. Hinata, I understand that how they have treated you all these years have made you feel an anger and sorrow so strong that you would want nothing but revenge. And I have done nothing but support you in all decisions you've made as Empress, because they were smart choices. This bet, however, is a long way from a smart choice and is definitely not a good way to get back at your parents. Your Majesty, I wanted to prove my father wrong. I want him to know how strong I've become, and I just want him to be proud of me. Hinata, your father is proud of you. You don't need to go through such lengths to prove anything to him. Naruto could see how her fists clenched and how her expression hardened. It was clear that she was a tad angry at what he just said. How can you say my father is proud of me when you weren't there to experience how he belittled me for my entire life? Would you be interested in what he said to me? He noticed the flicker of curiosity in her eyes at his statement. When I spoke to him, it's exactly as you told me. He said the same things you've told me about, that you are not fitting of the Hyuga name, the royal family, and you are not fit to be a princess. However, when I asked him what would it take for him to be proud of you, his words surprised me. Hinata was sure it wasn't anything good. Her father expected nothing but the best, because that's what he was taught. When she failed to meet his every expectation, it was for a fact that he barely considered her as his own kin anymore. Hinata, your father laughed at me for asking such a question. He asked me why I thought he wasn't proud of you, then he said he did mention you were unfitting as a Hyuga princess, but he said he never mentioned you were unfitting as a daughter. Do you know what that means, Hinata? Her mind was blank. It was like her brain didn't even want to process what he just told her. Naruto sighed and reached over to gently tuck a strand of hair on the side of her face behind her ear and then affectionately cupped the side of her cheek. Your father loves you. Your mother loves you, too. Disappointment is a part of parenthood, it is almost inevitable. We do things that will cause our parents or caretakers to be angry with us, disappointed in us, and some might even have a slight resentment at our actions, but it doesn't mean they love us any less. As you've mentioned, they were probably taught to conceal their emotions because it may resemble weakness in a ruler. Now that you are starting to understand their upbringing, I hope that you can open your eyes to the truth, Hinata. Hinata was looking at him, but it almost seemed as if she was just looking through him. Though he could always read her expressions, she seemed completely blank right now. He knew it was hard for her to comprehend that her parents did love her. They just showed it in an unhealthy way. There are different love languages, my queen. The way I show my love to you is through affection. Maybe all those times that your parents have said something harsh to you, it was their way of loving you. They wanted you to become better, stronger, more confident. They just didn't know how to express their desire to help you succeed in a way that was encouraging. I know that what you are saying may be true, Your Majesty. It's just hard to believe that they love me when all I've ever done is let them down. I made that bet because I wanted to defend myself for once. Hinata instinctively closed her eyes when Naruto suddenly leaned in towards her, but felt him giving her a feather-light kiss on the forehead instead of her lips. My Hinata. Being a good empress and showing them the love they never experienced is the most powerful way to stand up for yourself and is a revenge all on its own. You have to understand that this will take time. You are going to be the reigning empress for at least the next 20 plus years. When they realize just how great of an empress you are, no matter how long that may take, I promise that they will no doubt, on their own free will, apologize to you and bow in remorse over what they've done. Hinata's eyes saddened. So what exactly do I do, Your Majesty? Are you going to stop training me? Naruto shook his head at her. Of course not. I still support you in your quest to gain strength in battle and in your confidence. However, I do want you to take back the bet you've made with your father. Hinata was scared. If she told her father that she didn't want to do the bet anymore, what will he think? Maybe there was a way of keeping the bet, but she could just change her rules of it. What if I want to keep the bet? Naruto was confused. Didn't she just listen to all that he's been saying to her? Hinata, making them kneel. No, I won't do that anymore. Again, he was utterly confused. So, what exactly are you thinking right now? Hinata stayed quiet for a moment. I want to keep the bet, but I will be changing the rules. However, that means I have to win. What will your new proposal be, then? What will you make them do if you win? Naruto was taken by surprise when a smile graced Hinata's serious face. Well, I want my parents to experience a life outside of just following rules and protocol. I want them to truly live. So if I win, I will take charge of the Hyuga kingdom for 6 months and let my parents travel the empire. I want to give them a break, to put it in simplest terms. That was not what Naruto was expecting her to say, well, as always. She did have a habit of surprising him. Are you sure they'll be up to that? I think they'd rather bow for 20 days than to leave their precious kingdom. He chuckled. Well, that's why I'm making them do it. I don't want to make this bet about me anymore. I want to show them what you've shown me. Naruto could never resist grinning like crazy at her. When he thought he couldn't fall in love with her any deeper than he already has, she happens to magically prove him wrong over and over again. Hinata searched his eyes and like always, she saw nothing short of genuine passion and endearment. Her vow of not falling in love with him, she wasn't entirely sure if she could keep it now. Are you going to kiss me out of nowhere again? Naruto joked and expected for her to avert her eyes away in embarrassment, but was surprised when she kept her gaze steady on him. Hinata didn't know why she did not feel even an ounce of nervousness in her body. Normally, being this close to him and having him tease her like that made her want to run away and bury her face in a pillow, but she felt utterly content and comfortable in his presence right now. She made the first move and took 2 steps closer to him, taking in the familiar scent of him. She raised her arms up to his chest and with her fingers, traced the linings of his kimono robe up to his neck. She then boldly cupped both the sides of his face and took in his incredibly handsome features, his gorgeous blue eyes, the thin linings of the fox marks on his cheeks, his perfectly angled nose, and his blonde hair that was a tad messy and unkempt from their spar earlier. Hinata, are you falling in love with me right now? He teased once again and smiled warmly at her dazed expression. Hinata froze and she thought about it, really thought about it. Perhaps this is what love feels like, because the only person who consumed her thoughts, day and night, was him. The only person who she's ever cried in front of and let out her anger and sorrow about her family past, was him. The only person who could make her heart flutter like crazy and make her flustered to the point of all her thoughts being lost, was him. The person who just made her turn her resentment towards her family into forgiveness and unconditional love, was him. So maybe, if this is what love was, then to hell with the vow she made to herself. She was going to let herself go. She was going to fall in love with this man, heads over heels, and whether she crashed and burned in the end, she knew it would all be worth it. He was worth it. Maybe I am falling in love with you. Naruto. Naruto felt like the happiest man alive. Hinata's admitted that she's in love, or maybe falling in love with him, and she's even starting to call him by name, now. For this whole month, she's definitely been different around him. He could tell that the walls she built to be cautious around him were slowly breaking apart. She was much more eager to spend time with him, and goodness gracious, she had the cutest smile whenever she saw him now. They both just woke up at the same time, which was rare, since he was always up first, and Hinata insisted on running his morning errands with him. You sure? You can just sleep in. I'm already washed up and dressed for the day. Besides, I never spend mornings with you, so I want to change that. You'll be exhausted. but if you can do it, I obviously am more than happy to spend my mornings with you." Naruto pulled her into a tight embrace. He loved that she didn't push him away and that she gladly and openly accepted all of his affection towards her. He never knew that loving someone would be such a beautiful thing. More than that, having that special person to love him back is almost indescribable. It made him wonder if his parents loved each other this much. Ah, what he would give to have his parents give their blessings for this marriage. He hoped that if there was a heaven, and that if his parents were looking down at him right now, that they would be proud of him. Despite the circumstances of his birth, he overcame the monster inside him. He learned how to harness the power for good, gained the villagers' respect, and became emperor even though he wasn't part of the royal family. He was able to unite the kingdoms under one empire and best of all, chose the most beautiful and courageous woman to rule alongside him. He took her hand and they made their way to the Uzumaki Records Temple. Is everything well with the current state of the empire? I checked the status of trade flow yesterday afternoon and saw that there's been a short delay of sending 15,000 gold coins from the Aburame Kingdom to the Haruno Kingdom. Hinata asked as they entered the temple and were greeted by the scholars who were already up bright and early working. Yes. Naruto's eyes scanned the table for yesterday's kingdom reports and picked it up to show Hinata. Right here. I had a report come in late yesterday that there was a small attack by bandits when the trade wagons were going across Honshu Bridge. Of course, the Aburame guards held them off so nothing was stolen, but that did take quite a while of time. The coins were supposed to arrive in the Haruno Kingdom at noon, but they didn't receive it until sunset. Hinata sighed. As much as she and anyone in this empire hoped for endless days of peace, there were still small disturbances like this that threatened the harmony between the kingdoms. Were the bandits imprisoned or did the Aburame guards let them escape? King Shibi informed me that they were able to capture the bandits, so they are no longer a concern. Don't worry. Naruto handed the scroll back to one of the scholars and led her to the back room. When we're finished here, I'll take you to the palace pond to relax a bit. It's a place dear to my heart. I only wanted to show you it when it felt like the right time. Oh, why is it the right time now? Well, I only share that place to my most precious people. The only people who I've shown it to are Kakashi and Sasuke. I did consider showing it to you on the first day you were here, but I wanted us to get to know each other better first. The previous Uzumaki king had the pond built for me as a gift. I'll tell you more about it when we get there. Hinata was once again reminded of how little she knew of her husband. She still wanted to know how he became the emperor in the first place and what his relationship was like with the previous king. They must have been close for the king to let Naruto take charge of the kingdom, which ultimately led to Naruto being the emperor over the other kingdoms. She watched intently as Naruto talked with the scholars, one by one, to assess the empire's reports. She noticed how attractive he looked when he was so invested in talking about a serious topic. Ever since that day she let go of her feelings of denial, it was like a whole new world that she had to discover all over again. Was this what it was like to fall in love? That question crossed her mind daily every time when Naruto seemed more attractive than usual, or when she couldn't suppress a smile around him, or when she would just find herself yearning to see him when they did their duties apart. She had to check herself often and keep conscious of her posture and expression because sometimes she felt as if she was just gawking at Naruto. She felt incredibly embarrassed when she caught herself doing that. Oh, she did love it, indeed. He took her to a part of the palace that she's never stepped foot in before. The wooden doors that enclosed the room were enormous, as if there were giants living behind the doors, and when they swung open, Hinata could barely catch her breath. The room seemed to be enclosed in a huge dome-like building with the ceiling made out of glass so that the natural sunlight could shine through. There were openings in the ceiling so that air could circulate through the room as well. It seemed almost like an indoor garden with the exception that it was surrounded by walls built out of stone and lined with small waterfalls. Glancing around the room, she noticed that she's never seen any of these exquisite flowers and plants that surrounded her before. It made her wonder if they were only grown in the Uzumaki kingdom. In the center of the room, there was the pond that Naruto mentioned. Surprisingly, the pond was a gorgeous, cerulean blue color, similar to Naruto's eyes, instead of the swampy green that she was so used to seeing. Water lilies sat on the surface of the water, and Hinata was surprised to see butterflies and hummingbirds flying about in the room. I take it from your expression that you like it. Naruto chuckled. It's beautiful. I can't believe the previous Uzumaki king would build something like this for you. If it's okay with you, would you mind telling me the relationship between you two? Naruto took her hand as they walked over closer to the pond and sat on the marble-stoned rim that surrounded the water. You remember how I mentioned that my father died fighting in battle? Hinata nodded. Well, he was actually the Grand Marshal in charge of the Uzumaki Imperial Guards at that time. The funny thing is, my father was also an orphan, but was taken under the wing of the previous king and so adopted the last name of the Uzumakis. Kakashi told me that if my father hadn't met such a tragic end, he would have been king right now because the previous Uzumaki king had no heir. It took a moment for Hinata to process that. How tragic was it that both Naruto and his father were both orphans, but more than that, they were also both incredibly lucky to be welcomed and taken care of by people who willingly accepted them as their own. As I've told you, when my mother passed away giving birth to me, my father entrusted me into Kakashi's care before he went into battle. Kakashi was one of the Uzumaki's undercover Anbu team members who took care of special missions to other kingdoms and territories. He ended up resigning his position in order to take care of me, but kept in close contact with the Uzumaki king. It wasn't until my 10th birthday that I was introduced face to face with the king. After that, we visited the palace often and the king was like a mentor to me. Naruto paused and his eyes scanned around the room. This room was given to me as a gift from him when I turned 18. I remember he said to me that it was a place I could call my own, a place where I can have my own time, my own peace and solitude away from the world that initially shunned and turned away from me. Ever since he told me that, I saw this place as something precious to me, and so I wanted to share it only with people who are truly important to me. Hinata's heart fluttered when he squeezed her hand as he said that. I am curious about one thing. If the Uzumaki king took your father in as his own, why didn't he do the same with you? Why did Kakashi raise you instead? It was too much of a risk to the king's reputation because of the fox's power. More than that, he had a whole kingdom to take care of, and he just didn't have the time of the day to solely focus on training me to control the fox. Besides, Kakashi was my father's best friend, so it was just more convenient to entrust me into his care instead. The Uzumaki king died right before the war broke out 5 years ago between the kingdoms. He decided to appoint me to lead this nation as the next king, though that decision was obviously met by negative response from the villagers. There were villagers actually protesting outside the palace doors because they opposed having such a monstrous thing leading them into battle. It was then that I decided that I wanted to be more than just a king to only one kingdom. I wanted to be an emperor, ruler and peacemaker of all the 8 kingdoms. That's why, taking what I've learned through all the training that Kakashi gave me and through harnessing the power of the fox, I was able to cease the attacks of every kingdom and initiate a peace offering under one united empire. I was able to gain the respect of the villagers who feared me, and I was able to reassure them that I could control the fox instead of it controlling me. Hinata could not fathom how much strength, willpower, determination, and courage it took for him go against all the other 7 kingdoms and convince them to stop fighting against each other. She was glad that the other kings put aside their differences and their fears of being conquered and were able to agree to be under one allegiance. More than that, she was especially proud of him for being able to slowly earn the love of his people. So, that's my story. Is there anything else you're curious about? Naruto smiled softly at her, patiently awaiting for her response. Hinata pondered for a few moments before averted her eyes down, slightly nervous to be asking such a question. Did you ever have feelings for another woman before you met me? Wow, what a random turn of conversation that was. Naruto stared at her blankly, a little in disbelief that she just asked that question, and also in adoration of her timid expression. Why would you be jealous if I said yes? He teased. He was surprised that instead of being flustered by his teasing, she instead ran her thumb over his knuckles and slowly looked up to meet his eyes. I mean, I don't exactly know the feeling. How preciously innocent she was that she didn't even know how jealousy felt like. Naruto seriously wanted to cuddle her tightly into his chest right now. He let out a sigh and figured that it would be okay to tell her. He wanted to see her reaction as well. Sasuke's wife. Hinata's eyes widened at that statement. Queen Sakura. Yay. I had a huge crush on her when I wasn't the emperor yet. Kakashi and I visited the Haruno kingdom a couple times during my youth years and I honestly was infatuated with her for a while. Hinata didn't understand the emotions that were bubbling up in her chest right now. Thinking about her husband having thoughts about Sakura and longing for Sakura made her feel irritated. Or sad. She couldn't quite pinpoint it. It felt like a swarm of anger and sorrow all mixed up together in her chest. Are you okay? Naruto reached over and gently caressed the side of her cheek. He could see she was conflicted right now. She was probably confused about how she was feeling. Hinata's eyebrows furrowed and she gazed up at him. I don't know why I feel slightly angry at you. I don't have a reason to be, but I am. Hinata, that's jealousy. It's like a wave of negative emotions, particularly when you feel doubtful, insecure, envious, or fiercely protective of something, or someone. Can you explain to me why you possibly feel like that right now? Hinata was embarrassed to say it, but she also wanted to be honest with him. Well, because, you said you had feelings for Queen Sakura. Alright, so tell me then, why exactly would you feel jealous about that? Naruto prompted more. He wanted to teach her to regulate her emotions in a healthy way. If she was ever jealous of another woman or insecure about their relationship, he wanted her to be able to express that to him. That way, he could always reassure her of his love for her. Hinata felt her cheeks flush. It was indecent that she would feel such strong emotions over a small matter. She never knew that thinking about Naruto with another woman would make her heart ache to the point where she wanted to cry. I feel jealous because I don't want to share you with anyone else. Okay, she was just so beyond adorable sometimes. With his hand still holding hers, he couldn't help but smile as he pulled her closer to him and leaned in, hoping that she won't move away. Hinata instinctively froze and closed her eyes at how quickly he leaned in towards her, but relaxed and savored the feeling of his lips when he kissed her oh so gently. This was the first time he ever kissed her first, so she was not exactly sure how to react. Then, trusting her body's instincts and knowing it'd be awkward to just sit frozen like that, she shyly made the move to kiss him back, her lips mimicking his movements. Naruto loved how she leaned into him, as if she released all the worries in the world out of her mind and just wanted to indulge herself in the moment. He was sure that he would never get tired of holding her, kissing her, touching her. If he was allowed to be greedy about one thing in life, it would be to have Hinata all to himself forever. He was going to pull away, but was surprised when Hinata followed, not letting him go just yet. Smiling against her lips, he then turned away slightly and let out a small laugh. My goodness, you're irresistible, my Empress. Would you prefer longer kisses from now on? Hinata turned red at his bold statement. I'm sorry, don't apologize, I was just teasing you. Though he knew she was probably embarrassed right now, he couldn't help but take her by surprise again by giving her a kiss on the forehead before pulling her up with him to walk the trail back to the entrance. And Hinata, you don't have to worry about sharing me with any other woman. Like I said, it was a mere crush when I was younger. Right now and forevermore, I will always look at you. Hinata stared at his back quietly, her heart still pounding like drums in her ears. She wondered if her parents ever felt this way about each other. She wondered if her mother's heart ever skipped a beat for her father or if her father was ever affectionate towards her mother. She desperately hoped that someday Hanabi will find someone to love as well. It was still hard for her to admit it to herself, that she was beginning to love Naruto, and for the most part, even though she hated the circumstances at first, she was now thankful that her father gave her to him. Naruto insisted to show her more of his childhood, much to her surprise. He showed her where he first met the previous Uzumaki king in the palace, and now they were walking through the Uzumaki village. When passing by an alley next to a ramen shop, he paused for a moment, making Hinata wonder if the place was significant. Naruto. Naruto froze for a slight second because he was still not used to it. Goodness, he loved hearing his name from her. This is the place where Sasuke and I first met. I would have been beaten to a pulp in this alleyway if it weren't for him. Hinata took a good look into the alleyway and she could imagine a smaller version of her husband and Sasuke confronting the other children. She couldn't help but feel a pit of guilt hit her stomach when she realized how afraid and heartbroken Naruto must have felt as a child. To know rejection at such a young age when all he ever wanted was to feel loved and cared for, was something that she couldn't even fathom. How she wished she could travel back in time to just hold him and hug him, and tell him that everything would be okay. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. Well, I'm glad he was there for you. At least you knew that you had one true friend from that day on. He smiled softly at her and kissed her forehead before leading her further into the village. They passed the marketplace and entered the neighborhoods, where children could be seen playing on the streets and the elderly greeted them with waves and toothless grins. She loved seeing Naruto interact with the people. He never rushed to get through and made occasional stops to greet the children and talk with the passing villagers. It was like a fresh breath of air to see a ruler who would rather be among his people than to just sit in the castle all day. She couldn't help but be in awe of him. Passing by a few more homes, Naruto eventually came to a stop in front of a small, abandoned house. The house seemed to only fit 2 people and was made of worn-out adobe bricks that were beginning to become discolored. Some of the roof shingles were beginning to crack and the windows were evidently dusty and covered with cobwebs. I swear this house has looked better. It's just been 6 years since Kakashi and I left it, so no one's really touched it since. Naruto chuckled and sighed at the nostalgic memories he remembered from the old home. So you lived here. Hinata's eyes scanned over the house in the front lawn, which was covered with long wheat grass and weeds that have grown out the past few years. Yay! Practically grew up here. It was my safe haven to return to when the world rejected me. To be honest, it is kind of embarrassing to show you such a shabby place, especially since you grew up in such a beautiful palace. Don't say that. Our circumstances were different, and besides, the appearance doesn't matter. Though this house is not as beautiful as a royalty's palace, it holds dear memories that are precious to you. I grew up in an extravagant place, but I yearn for much more than that. Naruto's heart sank at her comment. How he wished he could go back in time to be a friend to her in her younger days. He knew that she probably grew up lonely and knew nothing about fun or playing with other children because she was trained harshly to become the princess the Hyugas so desired. Can we take a look inside? Naruto hesitated for a bit, but he figured, why not? They walked over to the front door and with a wave of his hand, the door swung open. They both coughed as a poof of dust hit their face from the inside. Waving the dust out of his face, Naruto led her inside the small house, which was exactly the way he and Kakashi left it before the war. A small smile graced Hinata's face as she slowly paced around the small home. There was a wooden desk by the bedroom door where a framed picture of Kakashi and Naruto stood. She picked it up and wiped away the dust covering the glass frame, staring in adoration at 6-year-old Naruto. So Kakashi always did wear a mask, huh? Naruto shrugged. Yay, for as long as I can remember. He doesn't like to talk about it. Hinata placed the picture back down and Naruto led her through the rest of the house. It was fairly cozy and was still clean with the exception of built-up dust and cobwebs for the past 5 to 6 years. Do you ever miss living here? Naruto looked around the place he used to call home, and then shook his head. I don't miss it, but I also don't regret it. This place harbors too many memories, both the good and bad. It is just a reminder to humble myself, to remember where I came from and how hard I worked. I'm happy where I am now. Hinata was glad that he really was humble. She thought about how lucky this empire was to have him as the leader and how lucky she was to have this man as her husband. In times like these, when she was in complete awe of him, she honestly wanted to blurt out, "I love you." But, of course, those words were too scary for her to say. Besides, she still needed to adjust to her new feelings. It wasn't fair to him if she said it without truly meaning it. Naruto turned to face her. Hinata, have you ever thought about it? That if your parents weren't the rulers of the Hyuga kingdom, that they would have been more genuine towards you? Well, yes, maybe they would have. But, to be honest, if I had a chance to do life over again, I wouldn't want to change anything. Naruto blinked. Really? If you had a chance to do life over again and have parents who showed their warmth and affection to you, you wouldn't take that? Hinata stayed quiet for a few moments, then gazed up at her husband who she now adored so much. Though her parents' love was what she has always wanted, Naruto filled that void and showed her the type of love that was selfless and unconditional, far beyond what she would have ever expected. Dwelling on that question, she really wouldn't change a single thing about her life, because she had him in it now. No. Because then, I wouldn't have met you. Quote. Naruto's heart fluttered at that statement. So she would go through all that pain again just so she could be with him. Her family hurt her to the point where she didn't even know how to give or receive love, and to the point where she truly convinced herself that she was useless and weak, but she really wouldn't have changed a thing if she had the chance to. You'd rather be with me than to have an affectionate family. Hinata was looking at him as if she was in deep thought, and then her answer surprised him. You are my family, Naruto. Wow. Naruto never thought about it to that extent, but it was true. It was true from the moment he took her home that night and she became his wife. Taking a good look around the house that he grew up in, he almost cried thinking about how he can finally, and truly, have someone to call his own after so many years of yearning for his parents. Though he desperately wished to fill all the empty spots in Hinata's life that the Hyugas voided her of, he now realized that she also filled the empty parts of him as well. He was just completely speechless at how many times he would fall in love with her over again as if it were the first time. He reached over and gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear and caressed the side of her cheek with his thumb. He realized now that she was his home, his safe haven, and the very woman he would be building future generations with. He had hoped to be everything that she ever desired from her blood family, but now it was clear that she instead was everything he ever needed and more. Yay. He paused and took a good look at the face of the woman he loved so dearly and smiled. We're a family. She also had to prepare herself to accept her fate if she did end up losing. Not having the Byakugan would strip her of her very pride of being from the Hyuga family, but she decided that she would be okay without it. She will just have to hone her skills in battle without relying on it if it came to that point. It was her fault in the first place for making a bet with her father anyways, so she'll have to humble herself and accept the consequences if she lost. Letting out a small sigh, she stopped her pacing and made her way out of the garden and towards the throne room. She remembered Naruto informing her that they would have an important guest coming today by noon. As she walked through the halls and entered the throne room, she nodded in acknowledgement of the servants who bowed to her and smiled at Naruto, who was already sitting down waiting for her. Who's our guest today? She asked curiously as she took her seat next to him. A king from outside the empire. Hinata blinked curiously. Wouldn't that mean that the king was not an ally to the empire? The kingdoms that chose not to fight the war 5 years ago had no interest in conquering and even declined to be a part of the Uzumaki Empire. She wondered if this particular king had a change of mind about that, because what other reason would they be here for? Did the king state the reason for coming here today? Naruto shook his head. I'm not too sure either. When I got the scroll a few days ago, it simply stated that he wanted to pay the Empire a visit. There were no other reasons in the writing. Interesting. Hinata's attention quickly averted to the throne doors when a line of unfamiliar guards walked in, forming two straight lines. Naruto stood up and flashed a welcoming smile to them. The Uzumaki Kingdom is pleased to have your king as a guest here today. One of the guards at front lowered his head in respect before speaking. The honor is ours. We thank your majesty for allowing an outsider kingdom such as us to step foot in your throne room. Any kingdom, whether a part of the Uzumaki Empire or not, is always welcomed here. Your king may enter. The guards bowed in unison before parting a few feet away to make way for the king to walk through. Hinata looked on curiously as the figure entered the throne room. The king had eyes hauntingly similar to the Hyugas except for the fact that it was blue instead of lavender. How was that even possible? His hair was a dashing white color and his face held a stoic expression as he walked gracefully closer to them. Upon reaching the steps of the throne, he stopped and bowed before the both of them. King Tonari of the Tsuki Kingdom. I would like to express my gratitude for your majesty's permission for me to visit. Of course, any king is welcomed here, if they bear no ill intentions, that is. Naruto made a small chuckle. I hope the travel here wasn't too indecent. I hear the Tsuki Kingdom is far up the mountains, almost high enough to touch the moon. It really is a fitting name for such a land. The travel here was quite peaceful. With you as the emperor over the 7 most powerful kingdoms in this region, there is no surprise that robberies and bandit attacks have lessened over the years. I am doing my best for this empire, and even for those kingdoms not part of my empire. Speaking of which, the Tsuki Kingdom declined to fight in the war for power and also declined my allegiance 5 years ago. May I ask for the real reason why you decided to come to me today? I have promised my father that in respect for my ancestors, I would choose to isolate the Tsuki Kingdom from all affairs, whether it be war or allegiance. It is simply safer for the people of my land and also for me, as the sole survivor of my bloodline. Naruto nodded understandingly. As for the reason I am here today, Tonari raised his head and sharply turned his gaze over to Hinata, which caught both Naruto and Hinata by surprise. Well, I wanted to come see for myself. I've been contemplating for months whether or not to come. Now that I see that the rumors are true, I should have paid my visit much sooner. Hinata felt uneasy. What exactly did he mean? His piercing, yet almost seductive gaze made her extremely uncomfortable. She glanced over at Naruto and noticed his expression also changed. He was no longer smiling and his eyes turned serious. So, King Tonari, what rumors are you referring to? Why, of course, that your bride is none other than the beautiful Princess Hinata from the Hyuga Kingdom. Naruto's fists clenched at the way Tonari's eyes bore into Hinata, as if he was infatuated with her. How dare such an outsider come and stare so disgustingly at his wife? It was the first time he's ever felt this way. He now understood perfectly why people could kill in a jealous rage. You come to my kingdom, step foot in my throne room, and stand before me, to come boldly proclaim your admiration for my Empress. What is there not to admire? Any king who has not yet wedded a queen would fall in love at first sight if they saw someone as exquisite as her. Tonari simply smirked at Naruto's irritated expression. So, Emperor of the Uzumaki Kingdom, whatever you name, whether it be every single person in my kingdom, my own castle, all the riches and wealth I've acquired both in my lifetime and from my ancestors, or even my bloodline's secret to our Tensegan eyes. I will gladly trade any or all of that, in return for the Empress as my own. Tonari didn't get to finish and everyone in the throne room, including Hinata, gasped in surprise when Naruto disappeared from his throne in a blink of an eye and ended up in front of Tonari. Hinata's eyes widened at the orange aura seeping out of Naruto's body and she trembled at the immense power pulsing like ocean waves across the room. She's never seen this side of Naruto before. She knew now why people were afraid of him when they heard he was the fox child. She could feel the fox's energy down to the very core of her bones, and she knew that there was no doubt Naruto could really destroy a whole kingdom if he wanted to. Tonari, however, stood unfazed. Ah, so that rumor is also true. You really do hold such a monstrosity inside of you. I will give you 10 minutes to get out of my empire. By that time, if your feet is still even 1 inch inside of my kingdom, I will personally make sure you really are the last of your bloodline. Naruto's was low and firm as he threatened Tonari and pointed out the doors. The Tsuki kingdom is no longer welcomed here. Tonari's smirk disappeared and he matched Naruto's glare. You think because you rely on the fox's power, that no one can match you. However, I pull power from my ancestors and gain strength from the moon's tides. While you feed off of that monster inside you, the forces of nature side with me. His eyes once again traveled over to Hinata. If you don't want to negotiate, that's fine. I assure the Empress will come to me on her own accord. A small smile graced his face when he saw how Hinata's eyes flickered curiously. Because I hold a secret to the Byakugan. Hinata was astounded by how much this man surprised her in a matter of a few minutes of being in the room. How could he possibly know the secrets of the Byakugan? Was there also something in her family history that her parents never told her about? My Empress is not a trade item to be negotiated. She is human. She is my wife. Get out. Naruto hissed, and with a wave of his hand, Tonari was swung backwards towards the door. Tonari grunted, but stood his ground and ordered for his guards to step back. Mark my words, Emperor. She will be mine. With those final words, he gave one last haunting gaze at Hinata before turning around and leaving through the throne doors. Once the doors shut behind them, all eyes in the room turned to Naruto, waiting in anticipation of what he will do next. Hinata assumed that everyone in this courtroom has already seen this side of Naruto, judging by how stiff and frozen they stood at his aura. Everyone else, out as well. With no questions, the servants and court members immediately dispersed at that order. Hinata softly cleared her throat and approached him once everyone was gone. Are you okay? Naruto turned to face her, and though he was still slightly frustrated, he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Yes. I apologize for the overreaction. I just needed him out of here. Maybe next time I shouldn't agree to freely let in a king from outside the empire. Hinata's hand tightened on her dress and she swallowed the air stuck in her throat before speaking again. Do you know what secret he is talking about? Regarding the Byakugan, Naruto raised an eyebrow and silently observed her face. Was she genuinely curious about that? Hinata, you do know he said that just to bribe you, right? I know, it's just that if he really does know a secret to the Byakugan, to me, it's something worth finding out. It is my bloodline's pride after all. And, if I can somehow strengthen my Byakugan, I could have better chances of winning the bet with my father. Hinata wasn't sure how Naruto was feeling right now. His eyes averted away from her face and down at her feet instead. She silently hoped that he was not angry or disappointed in her. So you are going to go to him? Hinata's heart dropped at the sudden sadness in his tone. She stepped closer to him and embraced her arms around his waist, pulling herself intimately close to his chest. Please don't think that way. We can both come up with a plan to get the secret out from him. If it's something to unlock a deeper power to my eyes, then I want to take a chance to learn what that secret is. Hinata was getting worried when Naruto didn't even bother to embrace her back. Whenever and wherever she gave him affection, he openly and gladly returned those affections. But he was just standing there. It made her feel incredibly awkward, and she suddenly didn't have the courage to look up at his face anymore. Didn't you see the way he was looking at you, Hinata? Like he wanted to devour you. It made me sick. I am not letting you near him, whether he knows a secret to the Byakugan or not. Naruto placed his hand on her arms and gently pushed her away from him. I will not hear you bring this up again, understood? There was still a lingering desperation in her heart to convince him to help her get the secret from Tonari, but she didn't want to upset him any further. She also knew he was just worried about her, and this was also the first time she's ever seen him this jealous over her. She remembered that feeling of jealousy when she thought about Naruto liking Sakura, so she knew very well that it was not a pleasant, did not want Naruto to dwell in that kind of negative mindset, so she pushed down her desires to be stronger and nodded instead. I understand. Tonari rolled up the scroll and securely tied it to the leg of his snow-white owl. Hinata's face came to his mind and the sides of his lips curved into a devious smile. I surely did not mistake that curiosity in her eyes. If she truly desires to know what I know, she will come to me. I trust you will deliver this message by nightfall, little one. He ran his finger down the soft feathers of the owl's head before waving it off out of the carriage. As he watched it fly out into the sunset back towards the Uzumaki Empire, he couldn't help but feel as if it was fate, that Hinata would be rightfully his.